Hello there, my name's Scott. Today I'm going to be doing a review on the VPS, which I received from www.vaporworld.co.uk. Before I start though, I must point out that you receive it free of charge for the purpose of conducting a review. My opinion of the product remains true, honest and accurate as always. Okay, so I just want to also point out that the VPS, or Variable Power System, is in fact the Sigelei Zmax. Now the reason why they've gone with VPS rather than Zmax is of course a manufacturer called Zmax originally brought out a Zmax. Then Sigelei come out with another device that is in fact different but still called it the Zmax. So there's two Zmaxes on the market and both are actually different devices. And that's why Vaporworld have decided to move away from the term Zmax and come up with VPS instead. Okay, so let's go straight ahead and show you what's in the box. Okay, so the VPS, or Variable Power System, comes in a little presentation box, and if you take off the lid you're going to find it resting on top. Now this is the body only kit, so you're not going to get any batteries or chargers, you are getting just the VPS on its own. The VPS is both a variable voltage and a variable wattage device. You can actually switch between the two modes, and it's made out of stainless steel. Now the finish is highly polished, so it does become somewhat of a fingerprint magnet, but it does clean up nice and easily though. On the side you have your button, and this is what's used for accessing the menu, changing your settings, and also for obviously activating the atomizer each time you have a vape. You're going to press and hold that down. Just above that you have the very nice LCD display, and it's probably one of the nicest displays I've come across so far. Just looks a business really. On the base you have a ventilation hole, so if you was unfortunate enough to get a dodgy battery in there venting gases, and obviously the gases got some place to escape from. And on top it uses a 510 atomizer connection, so that means you can use any atomizer or cartomizer that has a 510 threading. And because it has this nice deep well going around the outside, you can also use the ego skirted atomizers, no problems at all. Overall build quality of the VPS, at first it does seem to be pretty good. It's got nice thick chunky threads on the battery end cap there. It doesn't have the same sort of luxurious feel as screwing other parts together on the more sort of expensive devices, but they do seem to be sort of more than adequate. The actual finish as well, very nice and shiny, and it doesn't come with any sort of little blurs or blemishes all over it. Obviously I've had it for quite a while now, so probably not looking quite as nice as what it was when I first got it. There are a couple of little niggles for me though, and one is a minor one and one is a bit of a major one. The minor one is the LCD display. Not the actual display itself, but the actual physical component, I suppose. And that is, if you look very carefully, you can actually see that it's been set at somewhat of an angle, and one side is actually raised a fair bit higher than the other side. Obviously, like I said, it doesn't affect the display. You can still read it clearly, it still looks great, but nevertheless, it should be set straight. But my main gripe though is with the 510 atomizer connector. For starters, there's a hole in the middle, so that means that any juice that leaks out your atomizer or your cartomizer can go straight down that hole and then get into the electrics. And obviously liquid and electrics are not a ideal combination. Second thing with the connector is the fact that the center pin keeps on dropping, and I'm finding that each time I put on a different atomizer or cartomizer, I'm having to get a pair of tweezers out and actually lift up that center pin in order to get a connection. I do want to point out though that I've got 3 friends of mine who also bought a VPS from Vaporworld, and they all say that their connector is completely different to mine. They say there's no hole in theirs, the connector is as solid as rock, and they've not had any problems at all when switching atomizers or cartomizers. With regards to batteries, the VPS can be used with a single 18650, and I've been using these AWIMR 18650s with no problems whatsoever. Or if you want to buy a extension end cap, you can choose to have 2 stacked 18350 batteries in there. Personally, I always try and avoid stacking batteries these days. I'd much rather just use a single. So to insert the battery, just got to make sure you insert the positive end first. That goes in there, and then screw on the end cap. Now you should be able to see there that the battery actually sits completely flush with the end. Obviously we had the spring on the end cap. It does make it a little bit difficult to push on, but as long as you push and screw at the same time, you should be alright. After you have initially put in the battery, you do need to turn the VPS on, and this is done by tapping the power button quickly 5 times. So now the main power to the VPS is on, I can quickly show you how to navigate your way through the menu. So to access the menu, you tap the button quickly 3 times, then further slow individual clicks will cycle your way through the 8 individual menu settings. Once you're on the menu that you want to adjust, you just pause, that enters its sub-menu, and then further slow individual clicks will cycle its way through the various options. Once you're on the option that you want, you just pause, and that will then save it. The first option simply allows you to turn the device on or off, so enter the first menu, slide down to off, wait a second to store it, and that's it. The VPS won't fire up if you're carrying it around in your pocket and the button happens to press against something. When you want to turn it back on again, 3 quick clicks, put it to on, wait a second to store it, and that's it. It will now start firing up again every time you press the button. The second menu simply allows you to increase the voltage or the wattage depending on what mode you've got it set to. At the moment I'm in wattage mode, and that means I can increase the wattage in 0.5 increments from 3 watts up to 15 watts. Once you get up to 15 watts it will drop down to the 3 watts, and if you want to keep your finger held down you can do. So once you've got it to whatever setting you want, take your finger off to store it, and that's it, it's now set. If you are in voltage mode, then the second option will allow you to increase the voltage in 0.1 increments from 3 volts up to 6 volts. Once again, you can hold your finger down to scroll through it a little bit quicker, and also once it gets up to 6 volts it will drop back down to 3 volts. Once you've got it at whatever setting you want, take your finger off to store it. The third option allows you to power down, so you can decrease the wattage by 0.5 increments. Once you get down to 3 watts it will automatically jump up to 15, and as you can see, if you hold your finger down you can scroll through it. Once you're at your desired setting, just take your finger off, wait for a second, and that will store it. But if you're in voltage mode, then this will allow you to decrease the voltage in 0.1 increments from, obviously again, 6 volts down to 3 volts. You can keep your finger held down, and once you get down to 3 volts it will automatically jump up to 6. And once again, once you're at your desired setting, just take your finger off to store it. The fourth option is a battery checker, and it tells you how much life you have left in your battery. So at the moment I've got 4 volts left. The fifth menu option allows you to decide what you want to appear on the LCD display. At the moment I've got it set to show me what wattage setting I've got it set to. So each time I press the button it says I've got it set to 12.5 watts. You can also choose to have it show you how much battery life you have left, or what the resistance of the atomizer or cartomizer is that you're using. So enter the menu, go to number 5, wait a second to enter the sub menu, and from there you can choose voltage, resistance or battery. The sixth option allows you to actually turn the screen on or off. So if you don't want anything displayed, go into the menu, go on to number 6, wait a second, turn it to off, and wait another second to store it. And now when you press the button, it'll still fire up your atomizer or your cartomizer, but the screen won't light up. If you want to turn it back on, again enter the menu, go to number 6, wait a second to enter the sub menu, press it one more time to turn it on, and then wait a second for it to store, and that's it, you're back to how it was. The seventh option allows you to choose between having the VPS as a variable wattage device or a variable voltage device. So if you want it as variable voltage, you leave it on voltage, or if you want it on variable wattage, you leave it on power. And the eighth option allows you to select between RMS or mean. Now this has been sort of covered to death recently, and basically, to cut a long story short, RMS is accurate and mean is a bit pants. So just leave it on the RMS. Okay, so that was the VPS and its menu system. I've just attached my trap tank. Let's go ahead and see what it vapes like. Okay, so that was the VPS or Sigelei Zmax, and what I'll do now is go ahead and show you in action. So I'm going to be using it with my trap tank, which has got a 2 ohm bow cartomizer in there, and the tank has been filled up with some 18mg strength tobacco flavoured e-liquid, and it's just a PG liquid. And I've got the VPS set at 9 watts. As you can see, like vapour wise, you know, you're getting tons of vapour coming out of it. But obviously you have to bear in mind that the amount of vapour you get and also the throw hit is going to be very dependent on your own sort of personal setup with regards to what voltage or wattage you've got the VPS set to, what sort of atomizer or cartomizer you're using, what sort of e-liquid, whether it's a PG e-liquid or a VG e-liquid. But nevertheless, with the setup I've got here, getting plenty of vapour. Excuse me. Let's talk about build quality then. Now, when you first get it, or when I first got it, should I say, you know, you took it out of the box and my first impressions were, bloody hell, that looks nice, because it really does look absolutely fantastic. And after using it for a little while though, you do notice, you know, those couple of things which do sort of let it down a bit. The first one is a fairly sort of minor one really, it's just the LCD screen. Now in the close-up shots, I'm not too sure how well it came across the actual part I was trying to point out. It's not the like the surface of the screen where it's been mounted. It's actually inside the VPS. You can actually see it's you know, it's a little bit pissed. But the major problem for me, which does seem to be isolated just to me, I want to point out though, is the 510 connector. Now it just seems like, you know, they've gone out of their way to make a really nice device, and I just thought, oh, put a 510 connector in it. What one should we use? I'll just give them one of those shitty ones. You know, because it really does seem to be a very, very low quality 510 connector in there. For starters, there's a hole in the middle. So obviously, you know, if your atomizer or your cartomizer starts to leak any juice, this could easily go down that hole, get onto all the electrics. Obviously, liquid and electrics aren't really an ideal combination. Now the main problem for me though is that the centre pin over time keeps on dropping, and especially notice it more if I sort of take this off now, put a different atomizer on now, then the chances are I'm going to get a pair of tweezers out and start lifting up that centre pin again. Now it's not a case of it's my atomizer's been a problem, because I don't have to do that on any other device I've ever owned in my whole time I've ever been vaping, so it's definitely the VPS rather than my atomizers or cartomizers. And you know, so for me that is another sort of pain in the arse of a problem really. Rest of the build quality though, I think is, you know, is very good when you consider, you know, it's not quite in the same price bracket as, for example, the Vamo, but nevertheless it is still, I think, is a very reasonably priced device. I think it's less than 65 quid, something like that. And you know, if the connector was all right, I think it'd be absolutely fantastic. Now, looks wise, it looks the absolute business. It really is a very sleek and nice looking device. The finish on it is superb. No little sort of you know, marks or scrapes or anything like that. It just it's extremely highly polished, so it is a real fingerprint magnet, but it does look the absolute nuts. And with the screen is absolutely fantastic. It really is. And the threading, you know, it is quite tight to get that end cap in there, but it does seem to screw in, you know, sort of fairly nice and smoothly though. So, you know, overall build quality, you know, is very good, considering the price as well, bearing in mind, but really let down by the slight one of being the LCD screen not being completely sort of sitting flush. It's more like that, and also the 510 connector for me is definitely a major negative. And like I said, no, I do want to point out that I think it's 3 of my mates, they all purchased one of these from Vapor World, you know, around the same time that I received this one, and not one of them has had any problems at all with the 510 connector. So it does seem to be just isolated to me, but I can only judge the device on the one I've actually got in my own hands. You know, so other than that though, you know, I think it's a fantastic product really. Okay, I'll try and give a brief explanation of sort of variable voltage and variable wattage, just for those, you know, people who might be watching this video have never heard of it before. Now let's just say, for example, I've got a a 2.5 ohm car optimizer on the VPS, and it's I'm in variable voltage mode, and I've got it set to like 5 volts. And 5 volts with that 2.5 ohm car optimizer will give me a really nice vape, plenty of flavour, plenty of vapour, plenty of throw hit. You know, it'll be vaping a treat. Now let's just say I fancy changing over the car optimizer or the atomizer to something different, and I put a low resistance atomizer or car optimizer on there, reading 1.2 ohms. Now if I didn't change the voltage, it's still going to be pushing 5 volts through that ATI, and 5 volts for 1.2 ohms is just going to give you a pretty harsh experience. It's going to taste pretty rank. You know, you probably will get a nice amount of vapor, but it's just going to be a pretty awful experience. That's what I personally think anyway. And but the difference is though, sorry, just backtracking there. So basically, in the variable voltage mode, you have to actually sort of manually adjust the voltage to match the resistance of the atomizer that you're using. Now with variable wattage mode, you set your power output, and it basically doesn't matter what sort of atomizer you put on there. It'll automatically read the resistance of the ATI or the car atomizer, and then automatically adjust the voltage to make sure you're still getting that same power output. So I've got this at 9 watts at the moment. I could put a 2.5 ohm car optimizer on there, have a cracking vape. I could then switch that over to a 1.2 ohm car optimizer, for example, and it would still give me a cracking vape with no sort of problems. So basically it's a case of, you know, you play about with it when you first get it, find the right wattage setting for you personally, and once you've found it, you don't really need to ever touch it again. You can just sort of, you know, swap car optimizers over, different resistances, and you're still going to get a nice, consistent vape out of it. So hopefully that's a simplified way of trying to explain it, but probably not though. Battery life on it, I'm using it with just a single battery. I try and avoid stacking batteries if possible. It's just my own personal preference. And the one I'm using is a 2000 milliamp hour battery, and I'm finding it's lasting me pretty much the full day. And I class myself as a moderate vapor, but I'm probably more of a heavy vapor than what people may actually think, because I use the word moderate. Now I call myself moderate because I'm not a chain vapor. There are people who wake up in the morning, stick their e-cig in their gob, and that's it. It doesn't leave their mouth until they go to sleep at night, whereas I can go 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, etc. without vaping if I absolutely have to. So that's why I class myself more as a moderate vapor rather than like a heavy or chain vapor. If you're a exceptionally heavy vapor, I would have thought you're still going to get a good sort of 3/4 of a day's worth of vaping out of a 18650 battery. But you know, like for me, based on how much I vape, you know, this lasts me pretty much a full day, so that's pretty good really. The switch on it, you know, it's a nice switch. It works. There is a little bit of rattle there, so it's not sort of you know, it's firmly fixed in place, but like I said, you know, there's a bit of clearance around the outside, so it does rattle a little bit. But you know, it's quite a nice big button. It's flat as well, so it feels pretty comfortable to use. Not had any problems with it whatsoever. Every time I press it, you know, it accesses the menu when I want it to. It fires up the atomizer or the car atomizer when I want it to. So only real slight complaint is that it's a little bit loose in there. Other than that, you know, it works perfectly. You know, overall, again, it's one of those sort of what I'd class as more like the budget end of the market, I suppose. And for the price, you know, I think it's an absolutely fantastic device. Only thing for me, like that really does let it down properly is just the 510 connector. And hopefully, you know, I am just an isolated case. I've not seen any other people on the forums and they're complaining about the same sort of things as what I've experienced, but I can only judge it on the one that I've got in my hand. So, you know, if you did happen to get one, hopefully you'll be like my friends' ones and not have any problems with it whatsoever. Now, overall though, you know, it's a cracking device. It looks the absolute nuts. I think looks-wise, it's definitely the nicest looking variable voltage or variable wattage device on the market. You know, it's not too garish. It's got a beautiful finish on it. It looks fantastic with the LCD display as well. And it just looks a business basically. And I'll come to the scores then. For the Well, for the looks, it's going to be a 10 out of 10. It looks fantastic. I'm not going to bother scoring the vapor or the throw hit because it will be down to your own personal setup. Battery life, if I can make a battery last me a full day, that's great. If I can make it last me over a day, obviously that's excellent. So it's lasted me a full day, so I'll give that an 8 out of 10. For the button or the switch, no, it works perfectly, no problems with it at all. I'll knock a point off though because it is a little bit on the rattly side, so I'll still give it a 9 out of 10. If you fancy trying one of these out for yourself, go along to www.vaporworld.co.uk. Thank you very much for watching. Also come along and visit my website at www.e-cig-reviews.com. That's e-cig-reviews.com. Cheers guys, happy vaping, see you later.